This clip is exam tips, and it's just about approaches in psychopathology. So where does this live? So this is in PSY2, your second paper, and abnormality, obviously. And this is a really quick clip, but it's just to help you to try and condense your notes to make sure you're answering the right questions with this. Because what students say is, they get the question, which is outline the behaviour model, and they know so much about it that they end up writing reams of stuff which isn't really relevant. So this is just a way of helping you how to condense your revision and how to help you in the exam. Okay, so firstly, remember, you will never need to know each approach for more than 6 marks. Because if you get a 12-mark question, it will be 6 for outline and 6 evaluate. Even if they ask you outline the model, the most we've ever seen in a paper has been 5 out of 6 for that. And that's only been once. Normally it's kind of 4 out of 6. So just think, you don't need to write 3 pages on behaviourism because, well, it's only worth 6 marks, so remember that. So, I know it's easier said than done though. So don't try and include everything you've been taught. Because your teacher, in order for you to understand the gist of the model, they obviously have to teach you the model, and in quite a lot of detail, particularly for the psychodynamic model. But you don't need to explain all of this because it's only worth 6 marks. And so just think, right, what is it that this model is really about? And that's what you're going to write down. So a tip for this is, you should be able to write out the whole theory in half a side to 3/4 of a side, depending on how big your handwriting is, for 6 marks. No more than that. If you're writing 2 pages, it's too much. And that's for 6 marks. For 3 marks, for sort of 4 marks, a third of a side. Because if you look at, in your exam papers, outline the biological model for 4 marks, you get about that much dotted space. About a third of a side, so if you're writing any more, you're wasting your time. Okay, so when explaining, first this is a bit of a tip, when explaining all approaches, always start with the key assumption, because what you could do is go straight into the detail of it. But remember, if it's only worth 4, then you don't need all of the detail of it. So always start with the key assumption. So for instance, the biological model, the Bing. So I'm guessing you know the Bing? Biochemistry, infection, neuroanatomy, genetics. So it's easy to just go straight in and write the Bing. But if you think about it, if you do it properly, that's going to be 3/4 of a side. And if it's only worth 4 marks, too much. And so for behaviourism, if you write the whole of classical conditioning, what it is in all the detail, again, you're not going to get many marks. So always start with the key assumption and then follow it with the rest, because then you're getting the gist of this. So it says for a 4-mark question, you'll get 2 marks for this. As many as 3 if it's really well explained, just for the key assumption, and then you can bring everything else in. Okay, so I'll give you an example. So the key assumption for the psychodynamic approach, for example, is, well, you know this. All abnormality and mental illness is caused by unresolved unconscious conflicts starting in childhood. Now, that is telling the examiner a lot, isn't it? You're saying, right, I know that it's all about childhood, that it's about the unconscious, it's conflicts, and it's unresolved. So that is going to give you 1 or 2 marks already. And if it's only worth 4, you don't need to say much. But what some people do is go in and start writing about the psychosexual stages. There are 5 psychosexual stages in massive detail. No, don't do that. Then you can mention the key aspects. So always start with this. So how can I fit it into half a side? I know you're saying, can you really fit it in? Well, you have to think, right, the psychosexual stages. How can I write that in 2 or 3 sentences? Well, actually, you can do it in 2 sentences. You don't have to describe the different stages in detail or anything like that. So what do? Start with the key assumption, or 1 sentence, yeah? 2 at the most. Then, 2 sentences on each of the 3 aspects. And I said just the gist, don't explain, for example, what the stages are, or don't go into detail about what the id is, what the superego is. The examiner already knows these things. And then it's always better to explain using an example, or it might not relate to psychopathology. The danger is, what some of you do, outline behaviourism, is that you start writing about classical conditioning, but you don't link it into abnormality. And then it's kind of like, well, that's not what the question is asking, so try and link it into examples if you can. Now, I've got an example to show you of how you can do just this, how you can summarise it. And I've written it onto a piece of paper to show you can get it into half a slide. So, okay, oh actually, yeah, firstly, try and have a go. If you've already done this, pause it, and then think, right, can I do this? How can I summarise it? So pause this and have a go, and then I'll show you the answer. Okay, right, so hopefully you've paused it. So, here's the answer. So obviously, firstly, you start with the key assumption. Then, so if you have a look, this is one sentence with a tiny bit at the end. So you don't, rather than saying this is what the id is, this is what the superego is, this is what the ego is, you just simply say abnormality is when there is an imbalance in the personality structures. For example, if someone has an excessively dominant id, they might be immoral and would appear not in touch with reality. Done. Yeah? You don't even have to say what they are. The next bit, the psychosexual stages, again, just say literally what causes it. So, again, we've got one sentence, two sentences. So, major conflicts or excessive gratifications, i.e. being overfed, lead to fixation. Just give an example. For example, if you're fixated at the oral stage, this could lead you to experiencing issues. We've got here oral fixation, thumb sucking, overeating, and then say that therefore, if you're fixated at this stage as an adult, you may return to that stage. Done. You don't have to explain all the stages in detail or go through them, which is what lots of people do. And lastly, defence mechanisms. One sentence, an example. People here list the defence mechanisms. No, just say defence mechanisms can cause an abnormality if they're overused. For example, repression. The example we've got here, that if you are repressing something which is difficult, then it shows itself in other ways, such as phobias and dreams. Yeah, and then you can use that as an example. Now, to prove to you, I know it looks a lot on there. Look, I've got normal kind of size handwriting. That is, that's half a page there. Is 2 lines over half a page. And that is all of the approach. So if you're writing reams and reams, it means that you're writing too much. And it's the same for each approach. For behaviourism, you don't have to say in detail what classical conditioning is. You have to just relate it to abnormality. So you would say, well, you could talk about phobias there, for instance, but you don't have to go into detail about each of the different things. And that is how you should answer questions on the approaches.